задать первый вопрос. Это вопрос задает член германского Бундестага, представитель Зеленой партии. Его вопрос следующий. А где та красная черта для России с точки зрения применения химического оружия в Сирии? Я думаю, это общая для нас граница. Мы категорически против любого применения оружия массового поражения, химического, биологического или ядерного. Мы очень серьезно.
In coordination with the Americans, Europeans, with other partners, to make sure that we know what is the state of the chemical weapons in Syria. And we have very sustainable information. We are confident that as long as the government keeps control of those weapons, the situation is safe. Our partners agree with us that the biggest threat is the probability or possibility that the rebels get hold of those chemical weapons. So we are monitoring the situation, and we have confidence that the situation does not cause any serious concern. And this was recently reiterated also by the American experts when they were making comments regarding the airstrikes against some Syrian sites.
The humanitarian corridor and the conventional arms control issue in Europe, could you say a few words?
Well, first, I want to support what Guido just said regarding the absolutely inadmissible options, to use military force against Iran. I would strongly support Guido's suggestion to approach this issue in the context not only of the nuclear program per se, but also in the context of the regional security. And we have been for several years in our context with GCC member states suggesting, to consider convening some security conference together with the P5, all littoral states, of course, including Iran, UN, EU, OSCE probably, and the offer is still on the table. I believe it would be serving a very good purpose to get beyond this mutual mistrust and also to take into account not only the security needs of the Gulf states, but also of Iran, because Iran has legitimate security concerns. It had been attacked a couple of times and did not attack anyone. And I would strongly support what Vice President Biden said regarding the need for incentives to be clearly shown to Iran, so that Iran must know the overall game plan, if you wish, and must see what is in for him in this process. Otherwise, we have to convince Iran that it is not about the regime change. Because whenever unilateral sanctions are applied, the Iranians tell you, see, it is not about non-proliferation, it's about the regime change. And this mistrust also must be overcome. On the humanitarian corridors with close air support, no. Any use of force, any threat of the use of force will be unacceptable, and not only because we still vividly remember what was done with the Security Council resolutions in Libya, but because the situation on the ground requires not more military assets, but immediate ceasefire and immediate end of violence, and persistence of those who say that priority number one is the removal of President Assad. I think it's the single biggest reason for continued tragedy in Syria. If they think of their country and of their people, then there must be immediate implementation of what was agreed in Geneva. Delegations of negotiators from the government and from the opposition, ceasefire, they sit down, they negotiate the composition of the transitional governing organ, which will exercise full power, as the Geneva communique said. And all the talks about misinterpretation or possible interpretation of the Geneva meeting, it is not serious. There is nothing to be interpreted It is bluntly stated on paper, and this is the priority, and not close air support for any reason whatsoever. On conventional arms in Europe, I think the crisis which we face now for many years is rooted in the inability of our NATO friends to deliver on Istanbul commitments, to ratify the agreement on adapting the CFE. Russia did so. Russia did ratify adapted CFE and had been waiting for 7 years for the NATO members to do the same. They were refusing to do this under artificial pretexts, linking the arms control to settlement of conflicts, which was also discussed and, in Istanbul, and some statements were adopted on these conflicts, but this has had nothing to do with the adapted CFE, so those linkages, artificial linkages, were absolutely unwarranted, especially since those commitments which Russia undertook on withdrawal of military bases from Georgia and on removing some arms from Moldova, they were fully implemented. So there were attempts to artificially link additional requests, additional demands, and that's why the adapted CFE died. What to do now? We have been for 3 years trying to suggest some process. Unfortunately, and we suggested to use the same logic which was applied when the START treaty was negotiated, namely to begin with listing the rubrics which must be addressed. And we thought that if we agree inside the participants of the conventional arms reduction process on those rubrics, we can start negotiating those one by one. Unfortunately, the American negotiators wanted to prejudge the outcome of these negotiations even before the rubrics are due. They were saying that there must be withdrawal of Russia's recognition of Abkhazia and Southern Ossetia. Absolutely unrealistic, whether you like it or not. This was a decision by the Russian president, endorsed by the Russian parliament. And the second condition the Americans put forward was that we have to keep the flank limits, which was absolutely unacceptable to us. I remember President Putin asked President Bush at that time whether President Bush knew that there is such thing as telling a sovereign nation where to put how many troops on its own soil. And President Bush was really perplexed, and he said, I can never think about it. And that was applied by the original CFE to Russia. So this is unacceptable. There must be ways to make sure that everyone is calm and confident, but without any flank limitations on your own territory. If had these two conditions been removed, we could have started already the negotiations. Now, frankly, having faced that attitude by our Western friends, we are not going to try again. We would be waiting whether some bright ideas appear among our partners, but so far we are not taking any initiatives. We have exhausted our initiating potential.